Welcome back. You're watching World Talks, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced major progress following a phone call with Vladimir Putin and revealed plans for a high-level U.S.-Russia meeting followed by a possible leaders' summit in Budapest. The move was described by European media as a gift to Putin and a slap in the face for the EU, right before President Trump is set to meet with President Zelenskyy on Friday. To talk on the latest, I'm joined by Bruno Oliveira Martins, Senior Research at the Peace Research Institute, Oslo. Thank you very much for joining me on the program.
Thank you.
So, as we've been observing the events of days past, there's been a lot of movement around security of Europe. We've seen the NATO ministerial meeting take place in Brussels. We've seen the European Commission voicing their plans for the security of Europe. We are ahead of the meeting, which is set to take place between Vladimir Zelenskyy and Donald Trump. And we've heard about that phone call that has taken place. President Trump said that he made great progress in his call with Vladimir Putin and plans to meet him soon in Budapest. How significant of a development do you think this is in terms of the war in Ukraine and the general security landscape?
I think that we need to understand this initiative as a possible development of the agreement reached regarding Gaza. I think that President Trump has had different types of positioning when it comes to the war in Ukraine. He has gone through different stages, and I wonder if now revamped by the success of the agreement in Gaza, President Trump might want to capitalize on that. Of course, it's not a very positive sign that just ahead of the arrival of Zelenskyy in Washington, there was this phone call, and of course this is a pattern that we've been witnessing in the past, where right before meeting Zelenskyy, President Trump meets or has phone calls with President Putin, and we don't know what goes on those phone calls, on those bilateral meetings, so we can only speculate.
So the choice of Budapest, hosted by Viktor Orban, from whom we've also heard that Europe, for example, is interested in war, while the summit is supposed to bring together those countries that are interested in peace, as he said, raised some eyebrows across Europe. What message does it send to the EU and Ukraine, and why might it be seen as a slap in the face of Brussels, that particular meeting set to take place in Budapest?
Well, I think that every Europeanist or every person that in Europe really favors European solutions to international diplomatic problems would probably prefer this to be negotiated at the European level and taking place, either in Brussels or in the capital of a country, of a member state that is fully committed with trying to find European solutions for this kind of big international problems. So there is certainly a message there that cannot go unnoticed, but I think that's just the nature of Trump. That seems a bit erratic sometimes. We never know what to expect from his positioning. But when it comes to the symbolism of the actions, nothing takes place by chance. So it's not a coincidence that this is happening in this place, in this point in time. So it does have some meaning.
Only but a few days ago, in an exclusive interview for TVP World by Angelus Kujins with Kaja Kallas said that it is important to remember that Ukraine is in fact protecting the rest of the continent, and hence I wanted to talk about the Tomahawks. When it comes to that meeting on Friday, one of the big topics is going to be whether or not the U.S. is willing to give these to Ukraine to protect itself and to strike deeper into Russia. But we've heard from President Trump, who is now sort of again changing the front when it comes to delivery of the Tomahawk missiles. How do you think this is going to affect Kyiv, and are we going to see any breakthrough when it comes to this meeting on Friday?
I really I am really unable to try to anticipate what will come. I think that I personally and many observers have been surprised with the turn of events and everything that deals with Trump's way of conducting diplomacy and foreign policy. So I will not try to make a guess on whether or not there will be a relevant breakthrough. I think that the issue of the Tomahawk missiles is certainly relevant. It would increase Ukraine's capacity to strike within Russia. I think that it's also important to emphasize that when high-level EU politicians talk about the importance of Ukraine for the general security of Europe, they are also thinking, in the future. So when we think about the way that EU and NATO, but particularly EU security is going to unfold in the future, it's quite obvious that European politicians consider Ukraine as a very important part of that solution. We can talk more in detail about that, but basically this has two main dimensions. So one has to do with the high level of preparedness that Ukraine has been showing and developing over the last 3.5 years, and this is something that will not disappear when the war in Ukraine is over or is halted or there is a ceasefire or something like that. Then Europe certainly wants to try to benefit from that, but also because Europe understands that there has been very relevant developments in terms of innovation, research and development processes, technological breakthroughs that have been taking place in Ukraine over the last 3.5 years, and Europe wants to make sure that that know-how is on this side.
So during the NATO ministerial meeting, we've heard from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who said, quote, "Now, if this war does not end, if there is no path to peace in the short term, then the United States, along with our allies, will take the steps necessary to impose costs on Russia for its continued aggression," end quote. So that's only before the call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin has taken place and ahead of the Friday meeting. Do you think that at a certain point in time, if this meeting, which is set to take place today, and then the meeting of Marco Rubio with the representatives of Russia next week, and then the Budapest meeting, if they do not bear fruit, are we going to see some sort of escalation or further involvement from the US when it comes to a war in Ukraine?
I believe that we need to take these declarations with a pinch of salt. We have seen in the past President Trump himself saying that he's been disappointed with Putin, losing patience with Netanyahu, for example, and President Trump, he plays a little bit with this unpredictability. So on the one hand, he mostly follows the agendas that he has predefined. Most of these agendas are aligned in the case of Israel with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and in the war in Ukraine, very often they have been aligned with some of the key components and wishes and strategic options of President Putin. And the truth is, irrespective of this rhetoric, the United States has the capacity to fundamentally influence the course of the war in Ukraine. And so far, it has decided basically not to do it, despite very relevant support to Ukraine. So President Trump plays a little bit with this, with the two fields. On the one hand, providing relevant military support to Ukraine, but then on the other hand, undermining some of what could be key components of Ukraine and Western deterrent against Russia. So, for example, when President Trump really downplays the importance of NATO, really makes European capitals wonder if Article 5 is still in place, this is something that empowers and emboldens President Putin. So it's really difficult to try to anticipate what will happen in 2 days, in 2 weeks, or in 2 months. This is really a new phase in international policy, in international diplomacy. It's a new way of conducting diplomacy, so this is very difficult to anticipate.
Well, we're all looking forward to the meeting set to take place between Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Donald Trump and the meetings that will follow with the Russian delegations. Thank you so much, Bruno Oliveira Martins, senior researcher at the Peace Research Institute Oslo. Thank you for joining me on the program.
Thank you.
And so this would be all for now here on World Talks. Thank you for joining me. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World in just a moment for more.